Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining our virtual summit today, and sorry for the slight delay. My name is Vicky Athersmith, and I'm the Director of Programme Management at eDynamic Learning, and I'm proud to kick off our panellists today. With me, we have 4 panellists who have extensive experience on this exciting and meaningful topic today: continual learning plans and instructional continuity plans. So first on our panel today is Amy Larson. Amy was an English teacher for 15 years and in 2009 went the way of technology and co-founded Anchorage School District's online learning program, ASD iSchool. Currently, Amy is the school coordinator, which serves 1,500 part-time online enrollments per semester. So hi Amy, thank you for being with us. Give us a wave. Also today we have panelist Heather Pelletier, who has been an Alaskan educator for the past 20 years. Heather was instrumental in the startup of Matsu iTech, where students may take an online course as part of their school day. This program has increased student educational opportunities across the Matsu Borough School District and has been implemented in all high schools across the district. Heather provides in-district training year-round for both online and blended teaching support for teachers using online learning platforms, as well as acting as the direct coordinator for Matsu iTech. Heather played a significant role in distributing the policy and procedures for online delivery and assessment of high school curriculum during school closures due to COVID-19. Welcome, Heather. We're delighted to have you. Next, we have Jeff Reynard, who is the founder of Vermont Virtual Learning Cooperative, VTVLC, Vermont's online learning for grades 6 through 12. Recently, VTVLC's work has expanded to support the state schools with emergency continuity of learning plans, which include a variety of supports for school districts, starting with professional development and including their learning ecosystem and course content. VTVLC has been helping schools deal with remote teaching during school closures due to COVID-19. Welcome, Jeff.
Nice to be here.
Thank you. And our 4th panelist today is Milford Chavoy, an instructor at the Hillsborough Virtual School in Florida. Milford is a 20-year veteran teacher with certifications in both math and agriculture. Using his past experience as a GED teacher, he learned how to be nimble and creative to sustain learning in any situation. He works hard to motivate his students, find ways to energize his class and to inspire learning from unexpected places. So finally, welcome Milford.
Thank you.
So thank you to all of our panelists here with us today. Many of you have provided questions when you registered for this panel. So we'll start with those questions first. And with so many of you on our virtual call today, you will remain on mute, but feel free to ask any questions in the chat panel on the GoToWebinar window, and we'll do our best to get your questions answered during the session today. If we don't have time to address them all, we'll be sure to follow up and provide you with the answers. So let's kick off with our first question, and this one is for you, Amy. So what back-end processes need to be in place to roll out an online program currently serving 1,500 enrollments to 20,000 district-wide secondary students?
So fortunately, our program had adopted Canvas many years ago, and our district also had adopted Canvas. So we already had that in place. Not all of our teachers in ASD were using it, but all students had accounts there, all teachers had accounts there. So that was pretty instrumental when we realized that we had 2 weeks to flip over our district of 50,000 students to online. I was responsible for the secondary piece of it. So basically we took our model of our small program, which is 1,500 kids a semester. We had been working for years to get Canvas to talk to our student management system. So we had the infrastructure in place. And once we realized that we could easily, not easily, but really easily send out all of our content to the 20,000 secondary students with the system that we had already established. That made it much more feasible to get everybody connected in a very short period of time. So we just worked hard, just really getting all of our district resources to talk to each other. And we use Q as our student management system, which is not really it's not out there much. It used to be Zangle back in the day. So it's taken many years to get that one to coordinate with Canvas.
Great. Thanks, Amy. Great answer. Heather, this one's for you. What steps are required for an efficient and effective rollout of instructional continuity plans?
Well, I think the main thing is to get all your staff, parents, and administration on board. And I think Matsu actually did an excellent job. They actually had a write-up in the Washington Post, I think, that came out yesterday from some random person saying what a great job we did. But we learned about our school closure during spring break. And on Monday, there was a no school day. And actually, the administration put together a plan where everybody at every school, teachers, staff, anybody involved, even the custodians, called every parent, every family in the school district. And by Thursday, we were rolling out laptops and finding out who had access to technology, and actually started school the following week. So we had a 1 week lag, and then we were right in it. But I think the big thing is having the buy-in from staff, support from the district, and we had really great support from our community. The main thing was making sure that every student that was going online had technology available. And since we weren't quite as a one-to-one yet, but we're pretty close, especially in our northern schools, we were able to give laptops to any student that had access to the internet. And those that didn't, we worked with our local community. AT&T and GCR were our partners, and they provided free internet service to families for the duration of the school closure. And so getting that online was really important, and it was nice having those professional partners out there. So most of our students were able, especially at the secondary level. We had very few that did not have access, and those that didn't, we provided a pencil paper alternative where they would come in and pick up their school books, textbooks, and stuff from the schools on sort of a rolling out basis. So that worked out really well. We had to make sort of determinations. Kids are not used to working online all day. We already had the protocols in place because we had about probably 25% of our students take online courses already during the school day through our iTech program. So we had the testing protocols, we had the students knew what there was expected from them. And I think a lot that was very helpful for us because they knew what they were supposed to do. Almost all of our teachers use some kind of technology in the classroom already we use Google Classrooms mostly, although we don't have a prescribed platform necessarily. Some of them use Moodle, some of them use Canvas, but just getting the information out, almost too much information at the high school level. You know, they're getting calls from 17 different people as they get in, but once it got rolling, it was really fast. But getting that rollout, and then the communication, I think, is really huge. That one-on-one conversation with every single parent, and they published on every school had a list of anybody that hadn't been contacted. And so we had a really great rollout, which was, I think, really important. And just getting those relationships with the families and with the students together. I think the most difficult part of this whole rollout was working with the special education population. And I know that there was some schools around the nation that basically just shut down because they didn't think the access was equitable. But because we had everybody, we had buses delivering food for lunch to any student in the district that needed it. And part of that was the initial phone calls and just getting that information from the homes. What do you need? What do you have? How can we set you up with internet? You know, do you need lunch deliveries? But having the entire district involved in that was very, very powerful. And I think that's really a huge step there, because we're not a small district compared to Anchorage, which is our neighbor to the south. We have about 17,000 students, plus or minus, and about 2,000 some odd teachers, plus all the support staff going along with that. But there was a lot of work going into that, and just really it's identifying the needs and then delivering what students need all the way across the district. It's a difficult prospect for us. Our school district is about the size of West Virginia. It's about 25,000 square miles or something. So we have a pretty huge reach, but each school reached out to their local community to sort of shorten up that distance. But we had staff buy-in. Most of our teachers were very technology savvy. Those that weren't had training available. We had really very strong support from our district leaders, from the superintendent on down. The principals at every school were very involved with helping to communicate with families. So they'd go through, we had our initial list, they'd go through, and then the principals would actually do the follow-up calls. So they were getting, students and families thought it was very important when they don't just hear from teachers, but they also hear from the administration. So it's really the three-step process is having your staff buy-in, getting your support from the district level, and that community support is very huge.
Yeah, it certainly is a team effort, and it sounds like, you know, everyone's contributions were valuable to make it successful. So, I mean, there's a lot of steps in this. So, Jeff, for you, what priorities, you know, there's so much to do to transition to remote learning. So what priorities should schools focus on during their transition to remote learning?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's two components dealing with the priorities that we help schools kind of think about. One was, and the catchphrase that we used was every teacher, every student, every day. And what that referred to was establishing a virtual homeroom so that teachers could every day during the week be able to connect with their students and really create the foundation for communications between teachers and students. So the administrators would be able to talk with all of their faculty during the morning hours, be able to have that homeroom or an advisory period where teachers would connect with students, do health and welfare checks, and really just make sure that each student had the technology that they needed, at least to do video conferencing, but also to provide a video conferencing system that could also be dialed in with a landline. Because many of the students, regardless of the state that you're looking at, don't necessarily have broadband, or it may take a while to get devices in the hands of each student. So making sure that you use a video conferencing system to communicate with students every day and provide that opportunity for landline access for the students is a priority. So once you establish that communications link, you're able then to begin building on that foundation to introduce new tools. Districts at first weren't quite sure. Vermont phased in a gradual increase to the point where it eventually face-to-face school was canceled for the rest of the school year. That really happened in 3 phases. At first it was, well, we're gonna take 2 weeks, and then we had a back to school date after the 2 weeks, and then it finally got canceled for the rest of the school year. So, again, there's some priorities and looking forward to next fall. But once you establish that communications link, that daily communications link between teachers and students, you can then build on that. The second priority is really about helping teachers and managing expectations that school administrators would have with their faculty. So, trying to think about throwing teachers into the deep end of the pool and saying, okay, we got a lot of technology you may or may not have used, and there's various levels of comfort with those tools. You've got curation and development of content that they'd have to use. They'd have to think about the way that they're trying to be purposeful about going from emergency remote teaching into more of a continuity of learning so that students are developing and increasing proficiency in various aspects of the content. So really it's about the second aspect is preparing teachers, making sure that they're comfortable with a phased approach of transitioning from just creating those daily contacts, then really providing the opportunity for remote learning to take place over time. And we were very quick to put out two opportunities for teachers, professional learning. The first really related to that transition to remote teaching. So going from the traditional classroom approach into teaching from home. What does that look like? How should you set up your home office? What about time management? What about good posture while you're sitting at your desk? So we created an hour-long transition to remote teaching up and running that teachers could access, get that basic information just to get set up and comfortable with teaching from home. The second that we just launched a couple of weeks ago was online teaching best practices. So this is a 8 to 10 hour facilitated course that Vermont teachers and schools can access in order to expand their understanding of remote assessment, providing accommodations from a distance. And it's really important that now that we have a little bit easier pace to look at developing these opportunities for teachers to learn before fall, because we don't know what fall is going to bring for us. Now's the time to really focus on preparing teachers to actually be more effective remote teachers. And it's really important to understand, my final comment on that is, it's really important to understand and help parents understand that this is emergency remote teaching. This is not online learning, right? There's a difference. If your house is on fire and you have to run out of your house in the middle of the night, you're not going to be able to comb your hair, brush your teeth, and put on a fancy suit. It's about getting things up and running, making things happen. But now that we have time to really reflect, prepare teachers and prepare systems to be much better at this in the fall, that should be the next priority.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, that's professional development and just preparing teachers is really important, especially even more so now. It's a big adjustment as well for parents. So Milford, this for you, how do you console and motivate parents about teaching their own kids? And I can totally relate to this with a 12-year-old in grade 6. So I'd love to hear your answer for this one.
Good question. Wow, that's a big one, to motivate the parents. So it's kind of easy because they're all in. So you already have that intrinsic motivation where they want to participate. They just want to be given the tools and the methods and the procedures to get it done. From the parents that I've talked to, a lot of them are actually amazed how much their kids actually already know about this stuff. They just kind of didn't let on that they know what they're doing. I'm in a little different position because I was already doing sort of like a blended learning credit recovery. So I don't deal with a lot of parents during the school year. I kind of go into the school and I'm in the lab and I more deal with the kids. So the hardest part for me motivation wise is getting these kids back to work. They still think they're on spring break since March. They don't realize that graduation is coming regardless if they want to or not. So.
No, exactly. Yes, my daughter for sure is feeling that. Thank you, Milford. Amy, back to you. This one's regarding mass rollouts. How does a district achieve equity of resources for all students?
So yeah, that was our biggest concern because we do have a big district, and our teachers, of course, we used Canvas, but not a lot of teachers had their classrooms in Canvas. So it posed a big concern for us of getting teachers to create content on their own, learning a new system. Plus, we also integrated Zoom. So we just thought it's going to be really piecemeal if we just kind of let everyone go at it. So we decided as a district to be a little bit top down because we wanted all students to have the same experience. And we did have the infrastructure in place to allow that to happen. So basically, we just we brought on teams of teachers. We use content from eDynamic, of course, and we also use Learning Virtual content. It's all housed in Canvas. So we went in and basically created some master classes that we then brought in teams of teachers to help manipulate what was needed for fourth quarter. So we, deleted all the content except for what we needed. And then we pushed out the exact same content to every single teacher. We had the same due dates for every single teacher, pretty top top down. But it ensured that every single kid had the same exact login experience. Every single kid was logging into Canvas. Every single kid's class looked exactly the same. We had the same, like a opening page for every class. And we thought that we just wanted to make sure that no kid was lacking, or just because teachers might not be up to par on creating unique content in Canvas. The second stage of ours, we are now trying to have teachers go ahead this summer. Now that everybody's kind of familiarized with Canvas and how to navigate it, we are having teachers now start working in teams with our curriculum department to create content that will roll out in the fall. So again, we're trying to make sure kids have similar experiences, and we're just trying to find like consistency in content, whether it's the content we use from eDynamic or the content that we're creating this summer. We do want teachers to have some leeway in that. Fourth quarter, we did tell teachers, please don't add anything, please don't manipulate anything, please don't delete everything, because like I said, we want kids who are taking English 3 at one school to have the same experience as another. But as we're moving forward, we're going to give more skeletal content that teachers then can add in a little bit, because school is about variety and different styles and structures. But just in a pinch, like was stated earlier, this is kind of an emergency situation, and we are going to sort of control it from the top down. But moving forward, we'll definitely have people have a little more leeway.
Yeah, definitely sounded like starting with that consistent skeleton base to get everyone going is a great platform to enable that. So no, that's great. And Heather, so you talked a little bit about this earlier in your previous answer. So what about, how are the needs of students with limited or no access to technology at all addressed?
We actually probably, I'll have to say about 90% of our school population does have access to technology, which is probably pretty large, maybe compared to nationally, but there is still that 10% that either has limited or no access. And we determined at like the day after spring break, we were already contacting families and parents and just doing an assessment of what their needs were. So we knew ahead of time which ones didn't have access and which ones. There's places in Alaska that, you can get free internet, but it's not going to ever get there. It can be offered, but it will never get there. It's just too remote or whatever. So those students, we just had a plan where they would pick up curriculum and delivery. And the other interesting thing that I thought was our administrative team at the district level basically came up with some parameters to help teachers with this rollout. And I work mostly with high school, so the elementary is a little different, but with high school you're looking at Carnegie credits and graduation and all these kids that maybe are not able to access their course. So we wanted to come up with a plan that went across district wide that would allow students to graduate even if they didn't have access. And one of the things that the district did was they modified the graduation requirements for seniors. So we have our state level requirements, which I believe was 21 credits, and then our district requirements, which was 24. So they paired off the extra 3 credits, which is essentially 6 classes. And so a lot of students basically were done, cut down the number of electives, didn't because we knew they weren't going to finish, and you can't have for lack of technology or whatever, kids not allowed to graduate. So that was kind of a very big decision, I thought, and just for this 1 year. So that was one way of handling it. The other thing was a focus on core content, so math, social studies, math and English mostly, and science. And really the electives were more of a supplemental learning process, cut down the number of assignments kids get. You want to keep the connections, and even taking some of your physical education and art teachers and having them help with the core content so they're still connected to the students. A lot of students, art's their favorite class. That's not the one they don't want to do, but if they want to graduate, they need to finish that English class. And so just having the art teacher be that important connection for those students. But a lot of it was just you contact the students by phone. You talk to them. We want to make sure that every student still is connected to their teachers. I will say that at the high school level, the percentage was a lot lower as far as kids continuing to work. than the middle school and elementary school. The elementary school was probably in the 90% of students connected and working every day. Middle school dropped off a little bit, 75 to 80. High school, probably less than 50, where you're just losing kids. But you still have to make the effort where you call every family. And the schools would put up a Google form, and they just had a list of students that they were in charge of contacting. And I mean, we're talking everybody from the bus driver to the custodian to the principal to the nurse had a list of kids. So it wasn't overwhelming for one person to make sure they touched every student every week, because the communication part was really huge. And then kids that had special needs, your special ed population, you know, they could do phone call conversations. They'd come sit outside their door. I mean, it was pretty amazing the lengths that our teachers and staff went through to make sure that every student was involved, that we had those connections, and that if they didn't have the technology, there was still going to be the phone call or the meeting through the screen door or whatever, that they all knew that we care. We want them to continue. We want our seniors to graduate. And I think it worked out really well. And I think it was because we involved every single employee in the school district in the effort.
And there is definitely a theme I see coming here, is that communication and everyone just being part of this and chipping in to get what needed to be done. And that's fantastic. Thank you, Heather. Jeff, just continuing on that technology, from a systems approach, what technology and cloud systems are needs versus wants in this scenario?
Yeah, and again, great question. I find a lot of similarities with the work that Amy's been doing to support the Anchorage schools. But we use Canvas, we use a lot of Florida virtual content, eDynamics, and our usual programs are all online, primarily supplemental. And looking at the 60+ districts around the state of Vermont, we needed to be able to scale those systems. And again, the priorities have to do with, you want to make sure that all students have access to course materials. Well, Canvas is a great learning management system for several reasons. One is that there are Canvas apps. So students that do not have access to broadband, they can work. I mean, I wouldn't want to type an essay on a mobile device to submit to my English teacher, but certainly using the Canvas app, the student Canvas app, there's a parent Canvas app, there's a teacher Canvas app. So the ability to be able to vary the device that students and parents and teachers can work on, I would say definitely fits into the need category, just to be able to make sure that you're providing equitable access for all students, or as equitable as it can be. The other consideration in that is, if you have multiple children in the home, parents are working from home, you might have limited number of devices and your broadband may be limited. So again, the mobile device access for students, especially just to access some of the content, participate in discussion forums, that kind of thing, really it's beneficial to have some type of wireless or mobile device access to content. But really the biggest priority is, especially when it comes to students with accommodations and what Heather referred to with what we call ghosting, where students don't always show up to class when we're scheduling it, is to really think about not just the systems, but the way that you're deploying the systems. So for instance, if school districts are requiring students to be in 4 or 5 classes every day, 45 minutes, video conferencing, the strength of distance learning and remote teaching has to do with the flexibility that systems allow us to leverage. So what that means is that we can create weekly chunks of work so that the students have the ability and the flexibility to work on them at times that make the most sense for them. Another recommendation would be to limit the number of topics for live sessions, synchronous sessions, to be 1 day a week. So Monday would be math day, Tuesday might be social studies day, Wednesday might be language arts day. So that students and their synchronous time, the time that they're locked in front of the computer, can be minimized. And the rest of the week, they have an opportunity to reach out for additional support, be able to have the flexibility to work on it at times that will help them be the most successful. But the key to all of that is the learning ecosystem that captures real-time data. A lot of schools are using Google Classroom, and to help them understand that in order to provide MTSS supports for students, you really need to be able to capture the data, like when are they logging in, how long are they logging in for, what are they accessing, and if you don't have that data, it makes it really hard for the support components in the student's education process to really provide those interventions, to see when students don't log in over the course of a week, to be able to reach out, to schedule them for synchronous help. Those are all the components that free up teachers. If you don't have to take attendance every day and it's all automated, that's a huge benefit that just provides more time for teachers to be able to work with their students. But capturing that data is definitely a priority and fits into that need category.
No, great, thank you, Jeff. So with regards to if they're working obviously in this different way, Milford, this one's for you. Are there alternative, everyone's touched on alternative ways, methods and assignments and assessments that can be utilized to show content mastery? So Heather touched on this earlier, but what are those ways or methods, assessments that can be utilized to show that kind of mastery from the normal what would be seen every day?
I know from our experience here, like I said, I usually work in a blended laboratory. I use the Edgenuity content. And so I actually visit campuses once a week, and I'm responsible for all the kids in that lab doing math. So that would be my day to go, and I would check with them any problems with the system or any math questions. I would deal with that. But when we went virtual, I couldn't be there. I couldn't do that. So what we instituted, which was, Jeff, you're familiar with this, using Florida virtual curriculum, is we actually do DBAs now. And so we actually have the kid on the phone. They have to schedule appointments through Acuity. So I like that part because it gives the kids a responsibility factor. If you want to go to this test or you want to progress in your class, you have to schedule an appointment. You have to talk to your teacher, and then we have a discussion. And then once I feel like, okay, it's okay, then I'll go ahead and unlock their test and let them move through the course. Now, at first, I kind of rebelled against that because I thought, well, this is so different than what we were doing. The kids would, revolt. But actually, it worked out to be a great thing because out of the 16 or 17 phone calls my colleagues might make, I would be the only one they would talk to. And so because they wanted to progress, so I got to make this call. So they were kind of forced into it. I don't like to use that word, but that's what it was. They were kind of forced into it. And it gave me a time to check on them as individuals first and foremost, check on their families, to see how they were doing with the whole thing. And then we got into the courses. Then once I did that, the communication was open. And so it felt like they had that relationship back with the teacher that they would see once a week, whatever. And I've seen a lot more progress doing that DBA format.
Thank you, Milford. Open, communication is obviously a theme here today, and having that open communication and lines of communication with all parties involved is definitely coming across strong. So back to you, Amy. How do you get quick buy-in towards canned courses? Heather talked about dropping some of the requirements for students earlier to graduate. How do you get that quick buy-in towards canned courses from traditional face-to-face teachers?
Yeah, that was a huge challenge. When we decided to go that route, we knew that there were going to be a lot of issues with folks who did not want to be handed a curriculum with no say in what they could do. But it quickly, I think, became obvious to a lot of our teachers that they were faced with a lot of new technology that they weren't familiar with using. They had to use Zoom, they had to use Canvas. They had to suddenly be able to navigate this content that we provided for them. So part of the buy-in we used was, like I said before, we wanted all the kids to have the same experience, and we understand that communication is the key teacher-student communication is the key for keeping kids engaged. So we convince teachers, or we encourage teachers to think of it in terms of, we're taking the curriculum piece off your plate, and we really want you to connect with kids. When the whole startup, teachers had to contact every single kid in their class by phone. We issued Chromebooks for everyone. And that was busy enough. So they started buying into the fact that, okay, you know what, I'm going to do it. The people are pushing out to me, the upper levels, because I know I am going to be busy contacting kids. So we really tried to emphasize that blended piece. Zoom meetings every day. That's going to take a lot of time grading these online essays and assignments that are coming in. So that was one way we did it. We just kind of convinced folks that this is good for all, because their focus is going to be the face-to-face component. We also then really tapped into our resources in our teacher community. We have quite a few teachers who've taken our online teacher training class and work part-time for our traditional online program that we run year-round. So we really tapped into some of these folks to be really come and help us with trainings. So other teachers around the district could see their colleagues providing support, providing trainings for teachers to get everybody up and running. We had teachers volunteer at every single site to be the point person to answer questions from all the staff. And then I really feel like, because it is a colleague, people are more comfortable logging into Zoom sessions to get help from someone at their school. We had, like I mentioned before, teacher teams we assembled very quickly to go in and look at the content that we're providing. We're giving them the class, but the teachers are making the decisions of what we're going to share out to the rest of the community of teachers. So knowing that was a big selling point, that it wasn't just these kind of folks who work for the district administration making choices. It's actually teachers saying, okay, this is a realistic list of assignments for kids to complete fourth quarter. So that was very helpful to get teachers kind of on board. We also we did have gaps. I think we had 500 unique course codes that we had to duplicate. So we provided as much content as we could. We kind of had to, sort of make do. Sometimes we might be calling, let's say, marine science might be used for a variety of different courses. And teachers kind of saw that was what it took to get content out to kids. It was more important to get something there out to kids, even if it didn't match exactly what their curriculum guides. But we did have courses that did not fit at all. So we, again, quickly assembled teachers' teams to make unique content in master shells and share that out to teachers as well. So I feel like that just seeing the amount of folks, the teaching professionals in our community who jumped in and participated in either creating content, training, supporting, it really helped folks kind of wrap their brain around the fact that they're teaching a canned course, because it's a kind of a hard pill to swallow sometimes. We also work pretty closely with our teacher union, AEA, and fortunately, the president of AEA was an online teacher for our part-time program for many years. So he could kind of finesse it a little bit more when he's, providing feedback to the community of teachers. But I guess that's pretty much it. So far, and I think teachers, they're relieved that the canned piece of it is sort of gone away. We will still, of course, use some canned classes, and that sounds so negative because they are good classes with good content. So moving forward, we'll probably still use some of our traditional kind of eDynamic or virtual classes, but a lot of our core classes will be, like I mentioned, handmade by teachers and communities of teachers moving forward. So teachers will be able to own that a little bit more. So.
Great, thanks, Amy. Heather, but what resources are available right now for immediate use in your district?
Because we have I would say right now about 10% of our students were already distance learning or on some kind of a choice school. The largest school in our district is Mat-Su Central, which is a homeschool program. We have a lot of charters. They're all tied into the school's district, but there's a lot of parents that already have access to a lot of different options for school, and that's really helped us to be able to leverage what Mat-Su Central does with their K-12 school and sort of roll some of those ideas into our regular school population. But we have eDynamic, Apex, there's a lot of almost every single company we asked that we partner with, that we asked, and they've given us amazing access for free to help us through this part. MobiMax, Khan Academy, BrainPop, the district bought into Zoom as the main meetup. I had a few issues at first, but once you learned how to control it, our technology people said they were talking about, you know, it not being safe, but really once you've let that rabbit out of the box, it's not going back in again, because it's been a really good program as far as being able to have multiple students and teachers and stuff on it, being easy to use. But there's a lot of free or almost free or available for the interim technologies. Google Classrooms has been great. We've done a lot of Google training in our district, so we had that already. And then we're looking forward into next year where we don't really know what's going to happen. And so we were actually, our Office of Instruction has talked to our program, because we already do online delivery, about different options that we could offer, teacher training, access to courses, access to content at all levels, and then the being able to take classes apart. And I think the main thing they're kind of looking at going into the future is the possibility, if you have future shutdowns or only partial openings, where at the high school level and even the elementary, you're going to have an A-B schedule where you only have half the kids in school for part of the time, just so you can keep the social distancing and still. So I think we're going to see a lot more blended using, as Amy said, CAN curriculum, but you have the curriculum already developed. We already have access to it. It's available district-wide, and almost every textbook has an online component as well. And then when the kids are in the classroom, you do the face-to-face part, and just trying to match up those curriculums where teachers are comfortable, where they don't have to spend 100 hours their entire summer basically creating something brand new when we already have it. And there's a lot of front loading, I guess, with teacher training. And I'd love to talk to Jeff about his course that he has for the best practices for online delivery, because I don't think this is going to go away anytime soon. I think some parents and some teachers or some kids hate it. They all want to go back to school, but there's a few out there that are like, hey, we can do this. And but I just see in the future there being a real shift in education, where it doesn't all have to happen in a classroom right in front of the teacher, where you can offer, you know, online curriculum to cover your basic skills, and then you have that blended learning is going to be huge. But there's a thousand programs that are available, and just having that available, and the access to technology is so high out here that it's not a huge problem. There's very few students that don't have a cell phone, at least, and being able to use an app to access their class and read their content and do their quizzes. I think the biggest, I know for me, we spent weeks and weeks going over our testing protocols, and I think that was the most difficult thing, is trying to keep like an NCAA certification going on with proctored testing, and how do you do that in a fully online environment without, you know, having to spend a ton of money for every test. And coming up with those ideas and how that's going to work has been really huge for us. So we've been tracking it on Google Forms, and our students that were already online, we had about 700 maybe taking just one online class a day, and we've proctored about almost 1,500 end of unit or semester tests online, and we've just been tracking that with Google Forms. So that's been very interesting, and it's a very nice touch point for every student, is when they come to an end of a unit, is that they have to touch base with either their teacher or the mentor teacher at the school, or somebody to do those proctored tests, so they unlock them and let them take them on a Zoom session. And sometimes our proctors are not even teachers, they're certified people. So as we're looking into the future of making this workable, is you just need somebody familiar with the technology that has good relationship with kids, that's not a teacher necessarily, but it takes that proctoring off the teacher. They can concentrate on grading, and you have a proctor that does all the testing for you. So it's an interesting world, and you know, I think it's going to change, and we need to roll with it. And we need to make sure that all the teachers are comfortable with using it and that they feel like the testing is legitimate and that kids are actually learning something when they're not at school.
Can I jump in there and follow up what she was talking about?
Please.
I also teach agriculture with the eDynamics, and something we're doing here in Florida, which I know would not have happened prior to pandemic, is our certification board is actually looking to do remote exams. And so they're trying to find out a good way to get a virtual proctor so that they will feel good about the integrity and the fidelity of their program. So I'm looking forward to that, because I do teach virtual school. So I have one of my students that's actually in Virginia, and she's going to pass ag, and she's a great student, but previously she wouldn't be able to test with me because you had to test in Tampa, in a secured room with a secured proctor. So I'm looking forward to that, and that may actually help, speed that along, where we can do some of these certifications remotely and we don't have to be in one big room and all those things.
Yeah, without question, I think the future has changed for the world and certainly education and the way that we do these things. They're really great points. So as we think about planning for the fall then, and we don't really know what's coming, Jeff, maybe you can answer for me. What are some questions we should consider as we look forward to planning for fall?
Yeah, like you just said, and Heather brought up, we really don't know what next year is going to bring, but we do know that the education system has changed and will continue to change. And there's some really unique aspects of education at the K-12 level that higher ed has already addressed, things like intellectual property. So Amy had mentioned about teachers developing content. As a director for an statewide online program, we have to be very careful about the content either that we license or that we help teachers develop, because there's intellectual property considerations that need to be made. If it's a work made for hire, if the teacher is getting a stipend to develop that, well, they need to be aware of that. School administrators need to make sure that their master agreements address how that works. How does instructional design services work? Companies spend an awful lot of resources developing online content, and they do it extremely well, eDynamics, and a lot of effort and money goes into the development of those courses. So if the expectation is that we're going to start, supporting teachers to develop content to have that personalized experience, again, Amy put it very, very nicely. You're giving them content so that there's some standardization, but they want that personal touch. They want to be able to customize their approach to their own virtual classroom. So there's a lot of concerns that school administrators, teachers, and statewide education administrators need to start thinking about. The other is student data privacy. One of the concerns immediately that came out was there were so many companies throwing out, here, use this for free. Hey, this is a great tool to use in your classroom. And making sure that the vetting process is not overlooked. This is such a huge concern because these third-party providers that capture user data, if teachers on their own go out and say, hey, this looks really good, I'm going to sign my class up and I'm just going to use it in my classroom online, it really can present some issues. So it would be very, very important for district or statewide technology leaders to be able to make sure that they understand the process of vetting third-party applications and software resources to make sure that those student data privacy concerns are met. And the other really just focuses on what can we do for teachers between now and the end of the school year to prepare for whatever happens. And because we don't know what's going to happen, we need to make sure that we're trying to hedge our bets and teachers feel as comfortable as possible no matter what happens in the fall.
Great, thank you, Jeff. I want to throw in a couple of questions here we've had during our chat today. I'll throw this out for whoever would like to take it. So one question, what resources can we use when building our continuous learning plans? Would anyone like to jump in?
Yeah, I'm just going to say that there's some great guidance. Well, first of all, state level, each state's going to be a little bit different, but the state level, your Secretary of Education in your state would probably have the specific guidance in terms of a statewide plan that they filed with the Department of Ed, the U.S. Department of Ed. The U.S. Department of Ed has put out a large number of resources as well, specifically when it comes to special education. That's probably the most difficult component to make sure that you're still in compliance. And again, ADA compliance with content that you're developing, screencasts, making sure that you've got the transcripts. There's legal ramifications for not providing that accessibility feature. We do have quite a number of resources listed on our website. If you go to vtvlc.org, there is a link to our COVID-19 page, and we've outlined quite a few of the federal, both Vermont and federal national level resources that have to do with planning for remote teaching and continuity of learning plans.
I think I agree with that, and I think that you need to start at the state level. I know our state bought into Florida Virtual. That was kind of a surprise actually to every school district, maybe not Anchorage because you're already using it. But and the other thing that I'll bring up and is the NCAA question, and I'm really curious, and this is for high school specifically, doesn't really apply to elementary or middle, but I'm really curious to see what NCAA thinks about this whole shift to virtual learning, because some of their rules and eligibility things are a little probably out of date, and this might be the impetus that has them start updating their policies. But that's something, if you're teaching high school in your core content areas, if you are not following NCAA protocols for content delivery testing, you're going to get yourself into a really uncomfortable situation with kids that are going on to college under scholarships. So I would definitely look at that, but start at the state level, look at your district requirements, look at your school requirements, and then your individual classroom. But you need to do that step down through all of those layers before you come out with some kind of a virtual plan.
Thank you, they're great points, and we're pretty strong because we're out of time. So I think that's really important for people going forward to implement their continuity plans as in this changing world that we find ourselves in now. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We have a whole lot of questions that weren't answered. So if you did have questions that weren't answered, we'll be sure to follow up with you. And you'll also receive a certificate of participation today, as well as a survey. So if you'd like more information from any of our panelists today, feel free to reach out to us at hello@edynamiclearning.com, and we'll get you connected. Thank you again to our 4 fantastic panelists for being really informative on this really topic of interest right now. So thank you very much for joining me, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Enjoy the sunshine if you have it.
Milford, it was really great to see you again.
Yes, Jeff.
Heather, I've got those courses, the online courses, the asynchronous courses are open to everybody. So if any of your teachers, if you guys want to use any of the content that's on there, feel free to have them. There's like a pre-registration, like a Google form, and then they have immediate access to the 2 courses that I mentioned. So if anybody wants to use those, feel free. Not a problem. And Amy, it sounds like you and I should connect. A lot of what you're talking about is very similar to what we did. I mean, we've got kind of the extra added hurdle of trying to work with 60+ different districts around the state to roll this out, but love to chit chat with you.
Absolutely, yeah, I would like some ideas, so that'd be awesome.
Okay, I'll send you an email. We'll connect sometime maybe next week.
All right, sounds good.
Great.
Thank you,
All
everyone.
right. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.